Welcome to the Boardroom. On the show today, bye Brandon. Former Michigan Athletic Director Dave Brandon announcing his resignation last Friday, ending perhaps the most controversial tenure in Michigan athletics. And the new guy, Jim Hackett, a former Michigan football player and corporate CEO, stepping in as the interim AD. And finally, what's in store? When will a permanent replacement be named? And what will it all mean for Michigan athletics? What's going on? Thanks for watching The Boardroom. Simon Kaufman, joined by Max Cohen and Lev Fasher, two senior sports editors here at The Daily. We're going to stick with the topic of the resignation, obviously. For the time being, we'll start with the timing of the resignation. Comes right before the Indiana homecoming game. Lev, I'll start with you. What do you make of the timing of the resignation?
I think it makes sense. I think the timing was unsurprising. I think the fact that Brandon resigned that past week was not surprising. There were two factors involved. One was MGO blog, the popular Michigan sports blog, coming out with a report confirming that Brandon had sent some pretty inappropriate and unprofessional emails to frustrated fans and alumni who had emailed him to voice concerns. He had replied stuff like, "Quit drinking and go to bed. I suggest you find a new team to support." And, that's not the kind of communication you want to see from a high-ranking official within your athletic department. The fact that that was put out in the open was probably a big factor. And then you have the political factor leading into the general election. There had been talk of a potential 4-4 split between Democrats and Republicans on the Board of Regents after the election. That didn't end up happening. It's still a 6-2 Democratic majority. But there was speculation that if Republicans had held 4 seats, they would have been more reluctant to pull the trigger on Brandon. And as such, it makes sense that the move was made before the election, before the lame duck period, and before potentially 4 Republican regions had taken over.
I wasn't surprised by the time of the resignation. I was a little bit surprised that it was called a resignation. I didn't think Brandon would even get to look like he went out on his own terms. I think basically what it came down to is that every single week, almost every single day, for the past month, ever since the Shane Morris incident, there's been some sort of little controversy or embarrassment, some big, some small, and after a while it just mounted up to the point where he could really not be employed at the University of Michigan. So that was the most surprising thing for me, is that, he was able to go out with some dignity, and it was called a resignation.
I think it's worth noting that he's still getting several $1 million in severance money after his resignation. There aren't too many jobs in the country that you can resign from and still get paid a few $1 million over the course of the next few years. So I agree, the term resignation is pretty generous. Dave Brandon might not have had much to do with deciding to resign.
Agreed.
Yeah, he definitely will be living well for the next couple of years. A lot of students on campus claiming that this is, a victory for the student body, that the student presence on campus pushed Brandon out. Is that a fair thing to say? We'll start with you, Max.
I think the student body played a role, I would say, but I don't think it was, the biggest factor by any means. I think overall, Dave Brandon, throughout his tenure, there were some things he did great. He expanded the small sports, prioritized them, give him credit for that. But I think at the end, it was a lot of incompetence that really brought him down. So, the student body could protest all at once, but it's really how he went about his job that was his downfall.
Yeah, like Max said, there was a different PR fire in Brandon's house every week this football season. It seemed like there was a bottom line that he wasn't getting his job done in terms of keeping fans happy, keeping the student body happy. So I think the fact that the student body was unhappy was a byproduct of the fact that Brandon was not very successful at his job in the last few years of his tenure at Michigan. But no, I don't think the fact that students marched to President Mark Schlissel's house to protest the fact that Brandon was still employed, I don't think it played a major role. I think it was just a byproduct of the fact that he was not having a lot of success here.
All right, well, we'll talk about the new interim AD right now, Jim Hackett. He comes from a similar background as Brandon did. Both were, CEOs at big corporations. Hackett worked at Steelcase, before. They both played under Bo Schembechler, and now both Michigan athletic directors on their resumes. What should we know about Jim Hackett?
Well, it's interesting. You already brought up the fact that he's another guy from a corporate background, and you'd think, given the criticism Brandon took pretty consistently for being someone who focused only on revenue, only on the financial side of things, that Mark Schlissel would have wanted to move away from the corporate world back into the world of athletics, because these are two people now that Michigan has hired to run the athletic department that don't have prior experience as an athletic director. Hackett, he was a CEO. He was a CEO at Steelcase, which is a furniture manufacturing company. And he was popular. He had a long tenure there. He did run into some controversy for outsourcing jobs to Mexico, closing a few factories in the United States. But it seems like he is, a solid guy who has a solid understanding of the financial aspect of running an athletic department. And his job is really to hire a long-term athletic director, maybe depending on timing, to hire a football coach. And that's that. He probably won't be here longer than a few months.
I think this is really a stopgap measure just to make sure things kind of stay the status quo and nothing gets blown out of proportion or worse. At first, I was surprised that they went with someone from the business world, but upon second thought, even though this didn't appear to be the case with Brandon, somebody from the business world should know how to handle adverse situations. I think that's what Hackett's here for, to kind of ride the wave out the rest of the football season, help pick his successor as the permanent AD, and I don't think he will ultimately be the one responsible for firing Hoke or hiring a new coach.
It's not that people with business backgrounds necessarily can't run an athletic department. It's just that the business aspect was overemphasized with Brandon. That doesn't mean that everyone with a business background will overemphasize the financial aspect of running an athletic department.
All right, finally, looking ahead, President Mark Schlissel said he has no timetable in terms of naming a new athletic director. He said he's striving for excellence. When he does start the process, which he said has already begun, what are some of the qualities that he needs to be looking for? Max, we'll start with you.
Well, first off, the most important thing, everyone said, even Brandon himself said it, you got to get the football coach hire right. I mean, at this point, Hoke's still the head coach, but I think everyone knows unless something drastically changes in the next month, Hoke will be gone at the end of the season. So he needs to look for an athletic director that feels confident in his ability to hire a coach and can come in with a plan that he will get the guy he wants. This should not be a thing, this coaching search, where it should go, from option A to option B to option C. No, this new athletic director needs to pick a guy he wants, and he needs to go get him, no matter what it takes.
I would say that the most important characteristic moving forward for a Michigan athletic director is the ability to relate to fans and relate to the fan base and keep the student body happy. Dave Brandon didn't seem to understand that charging students $300 for football tickets is just not a strategy that's going to pay off in the long run if you want these students donating to your athletic department when they're successful, professional, 50-something-year-olds. So it's the kind of thing where you need to be not so tone deaf, even though Brandon claimed he wasn't. It's the kind of thing where you need to really understand what participating in an athletic department is like from the perspective of a fan. And this athletic director, the future one, who has yet to be hired, actually has a massive advantage because the finances, thanks to Dave Brandon, in this athletic department are so solid that they have a lot of leeway in terms of cutting ticket prices, concession prices. They can do that, make the fans very happy, make the fans like them a lot without really adversely affecting the day-to-day operations of the athletic department.
All right, great. Well, there you have it. Brandon out, Hackett in, and Schlissel saying he will make a decision in the future, but no timetable. Thanks for joining us. Dave Brandon might not be hanging around Michigan much longer, but we'll be back next week. Make sure to catch our content in print Monday through Friday and every day online at michigandaily.com. Cheers.